Why don't we just take the singularity and push it somewhere else? Honestly, that's a great idea. I can't believe we didn't think of that
no
sooner.
issues for me. Let's do it.
How are we gonna push it? And that is what we're going to discuss here today, my dear viewer, because as of the filming of this video, the Meridian Singularity is currently being pushed and or pulled by the Illuminate directly towards Super Earth, and if it were to make it to Super Earth, it would be destroyed, just like Angel Adventure already has. But the question we're left with here is, how exactly are the Illuminate moving the Singularity? Because, this is essentially just a big black hole. How could they possibly be moving that? Well, to get into that, we're going to need to discuss astrophysics at a very detailed level. Yeah, I'm a little scared too, so buckle in. Now, if we want to talk about just on the base simple level, we do directly know how the Illuminate are moving the Singularity. They are using dark energy to move the Singularity. This box showed up on the top of the game when you logged into play for many days in a row. It was saying that the Illuminate are generating dark energy on this planet, which they are using to move the Meridian Singularity towards Super Earth. But how exactly are they using dark energy to move a singularity? So we're going to discuss quick what dark energy is in our world and how the Illuminate might be using it to move this singularity. Now, in our universe, not the Helldivers universe, because they did extensive research into dark energy and that's how they created the Meridian Singularity, in our universe, we don't exactly know what dark energy is. It's a theory that it exists, and this is what fills in the vacuum of space, all the empty areas, and it also explains why the universe is expanding at an increasing rate. Because of this, dark energy is kind of considered as an anti-gravity. Any large object in the universe made of normal matter and not dark energy and dark matter and whatnot has gravity to it. You can actually see it with this calculation right here. If you so desired, you could use this calculation to calculate down exactly how much gravity you yourself, the viewer, are creating, which I'm going to do now. Now, to find the gravitational force acting on an object, you actually need to have two objects and then measure the force between them. You can't just have an object on its own separately and come up with a random force. So for this, we're going to say I'm about 150 pounds, we're going to clone me, and there is two of me that exist here. Now, you'll also notice in this equation, you don't just need weights, you also need a distance. So we're going to say I'm about 100 feet apart from myself, which is very confusing and is definitely feeling like a bit of an out-of-body experience here. Now, if we plug in all the numbers here and use the gravitational constant called out here, which is 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th, we find out that two of me sitting 100 feet apart from each other has a gravitational force of basically nothing, but not nothing. It's 7.477 times 10 to the negative 11th, so I don't create much gravity, and you probably don't either. But you know what? It's a fun little experiment here. And if you enjoyed that experiment and this video so far, I'd love if you considered subscribing to the channel. It really is the best way to support me. And if you choose not to subscribe to the channel, I'm going to throw Billy in the singularity. That's right, Billy, boom, right into the singularity. So make your decision wisely down there. Thanks, and back to the video. Now, gravity is a force that pulls things together. Gee, thanks, Einstein. We really haven't figured that one out yet. Let me just go get an apple and clobber Isaac Newton in the head again. That's what attracts objects to each other. That's what's keeping the moon orbiting around the Earth. The Earth's gravity is keeping the moon just constantly orbiting around the Earth. Dark energy, theoretically, is the opposite. Instead of gravity, where it pulls things together, dark energy, theoretically, pushes things away from it. And this may be how the Illuminate are using dark energy to push the singularity of Meridian. Now, before we really get into this breakdown here, let's talk about the difference between a singularity and a black hole, because this is known specifically as the Meridian Singularity. A singularity is theoretically the absolute center of a black hole, where its density is theoretically infinite. This is an infinitely dense point at the center of a black hole, whereas the rest of the black hole is not infinitely dense, it's just so dense and has so much gravity that light itself cannot escape it. The singularity in the center of it is the most theoretically dense point of it. Now, this is known as the Meridian Singularity. So this may not be your typical black hole, which explains why when Angel's Venture was destroyed, there's a lot of people that were upset like, hey, why did Angel's Venture just break apart and it wasn't pulled into the black hole? Because this may not be exactly a black hole. This could just be an infinitely dense point that humanity accidentally created at Meridian. So there is a possibility that as this singularity moved past Angel's Venture, it moved past fast enough that Angel's Venture didn't have time to get sucked in and surround the singularity, creating some matter for a black hole to form around it. It just zoomed by so fast that Angel's Venture just broke apart as it started to get pulled towards it, and then once it lost that gravitational pull of the singularity, it's now just sitting there in space broken apart. Which kind of lines up with how fast the singularity here is moving. If we look at from Meridia's original point to where it moved to Angel's Venture, sure, it took like a week or something for it to reach it of humanity trying to slow it down, but if we're looking at the galactic scale of how far apart these planets and solar systems are, this thing came zooming by. So likely it just went by way too fast and busted the planet into pieces and is moving on to its next target. But earlier, I was mentioning very specifically the difference between push and pull here. And that's going to be very, very important because I want to analyze the two possibilities of what's happening with the Meridian singularity here. Is it being pulled towards Super Earth, or is it being pushed towards Super Earth? Let's analyze pulled first. Now, if the singularity was being pulled towards Super Earth, that would mean that the Illuminate had the technology to create some very, very large mass that is creating a gravitational well in front of the singularity here to start pulling it towards Super Earth. But if they had the ability to create this large of a point of gravity, wouldn't it be much easier for them to just create this gravity well directly on Super Earth and just crush it down to an infinitely dense point and destroy Super Earth right off the bat? Because of this, I don't think that they are pulling the singularity here, because if they had that power, they would just destroy Super Earth outright. There's no reason not to. And because of that, I think they are pushing the singularity using dark energy. Now, before we get into the concept of pushing the singularity, there's a couple terms I want to break down. I've mentioned here a gravity well. Now, what exactly is a gravity well? A gravity well is just kind of the visualization of the gravity being caused by an object on the objects around it. So if we take a look at this picture here, this is a picture of the gravity well around Earth. And you'll notice that the moon is affected by said gravity well, because the gravity is pulling on the moon and keeping it orbiting around the Earth. Now, the gravity well is not strong enough to pull the moon in and combine it with Earth, it's just strong enough to keep it orbiting. Now, dark energy, on the other hand, I've mentioned a couple times here that dark energy is kind of like an anti-gravity. So you could more or less turn this gravity well upside down and call it something more like a gravity hill. And this is kind of just a hill that pops up in the vacuum of space, and as objects interact with it, they want to move away from it. They're like rolling down the hill and getting pushed away. So, while it is confirmed that the Illuminate are using dark energy to move the Meridian singularity, now we probably know how they're doing that. They're probably collecting dark energy from around the universe to create a bigger and bigger gravity hill behind the singularity to start pushing it towards Super Earth. Now, as you've been staring at this still image, you may be thinking, wait, Nate, you're an idiot. You keep saying this is a singularity, and like half your theory relies on this being a singularity, but that right there says Meridian Black Hole. But did you even read? I'm gonna be honest, I didn't see this till I was just editing this. But I think this still works with the game's lore here, because it was called the Meridian Singularity when it was first created, and it says here, even in this image, that the Illuminate are moving the Meridian Singularity. But as it started to move, and it destroyed Angel's Venture, it probably sucked up a good bit of mass from Angel's Venture, even though it didn't steal all of it, and now it is not just a singularity, a theoretically dense point like I mentioned earlier, this is now a black hole as well, because it has sucked up some mass around it to move along with it. But that does raise the question here. If they have the ability to create this big gravity hill and move the singularity, why aren't they just moving Super Earth itself towards the Meridian singularity? Wouldn't that be far easier than moving a whole black hole? This is where, again, terminology gets very, very important here as push versus pull. And that is the singularity versus black hole that I mentioned earlier. Meridia is specifically defined as a singularity, an infinitely dense point. Or maybe not specifically, because now that I'm looking at it, it says here Meridian Black Hole on the bottom of the screen here, and up at the top with the dark energy accumulation bar, it says Meridian Singularity. I feel like I'm losing my mind right now. Which one is it, Arrowhead? It's tough to build a theory on how the black hole or the singularity is moving if I don't know which one it is. Which one is it now? Okay, sorry, lost her for a little there. Back to the video. Now, that may mean that there's not actually much mass around this black hole, and on a mass scale, the singularity here may actually be less massive than Super Earth itself. So, if the Illuminate were to make a gravity hill behind Super Earth, say Super Earth is 10, 100 times more massive than the singularity, it's going to take a whole lot more dark energy to move, and it's going to move at a whole lot slower speed, meaning the Illuminate's plan is just going to take that much longer and leave that much more time for these hell divers to actually foil their plan. But now, how exactly are the Illuminate collecting dark energy to create this gravity hill? That's something we really don't know, because as I've mentioned, dark energy is an anti-gravity force, so if you even had a way to suck it up and get it into one point, putting it in a container would be very hard because it wants to push the walls away from it. Maybe if you made a strong enough container and had a little enough dark energy in it, it could work kind of like a gas canister or like a barbecue cooking propane tank, where like there's a lot of pressure in there, but the walls are strong enough to keep it in. So somehow, I couldn't tell you how the Illuminate are actually collecting the dark energy, but they're likely storing it in essentially large cooking grill canisters and bringing it over to this point and just releasing the dark energy in that point. Or there's always the possibility the Illuminate have developed some absolutely wild technology to collect it that we cannot even begin to comprehend. That is honestly the most likely case here, because it would take absolutely forever to collect canisters full of dark energy and just dump it here. There's got to be some way that they're drawing the dark energy in here with a concept that we can't even possibly conceive. So, I'm going to leave it here because I think that answers the question pretty darn well. The Illuminate are pushing the singularity using dark energy by creating a gravity hill. If you enjoyed today's video and you felt like you learned something about the Helldivers, I'd love you to hit that like button down below and consider subscribing to the channel to stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.